The timer chose us. Ethan Walker's voice nearly disappeared beneath the roar of rolling suitcases and distant boarding announcements. Across from him, Ryan Hayes looked down at the glowing infinity symbol on his wrist, then back at Ethan with an expression so unreadable it made Ethan's stomach drop. Ryan was striking in that effortless, all-American way that seemed unfair under fluorescent airport lighting. 29, tall and lean, with dark brown hair falling loosely over his forehead, a clean jawline, and clear blue-gray eyes that should have belonged to someone much easier to understand. Ethan, 26, equally young and handsome but softer around the edges, with tousled chestnut hair, bright green eyes, and the kind of face that betrayed every emotion before he could hide it, swallowed hard. The timer chose us, he repeated. Ryan's gaze hardened. Then the timer made a mistake. He turned away. Ethan forgot how to breathe. For 26 years, he had been told that zero meant forever. Teachers taught it. Movies romanticized it. His parents had celebrated it. Entire industries had been built around it. And now the man whose countdown had stopped at the exact same second as his was walking away like destiny had just handed him the wrong coffee order. Then Ethan's wrist burned with sudden warmth. He looked down. The infinity symbol flickered once. Twice. A thin line split through its center. The symbol dissolved into numbers. 1 second. Ethan stared. 2 seconds. Ryan. 3 seconds. Ryan stopped. His shoulders went rigid. Slowly, he raised his own wrist. The same numbers glowed there. For seconds, they weren't counting down anymore. They were counting up. 17 minutes earlier, Ethan had entered the international terminal convinced the worst thing that could happen was embarrassing himself in front of his soulmate. In retrospect, that level of optimism deserved an award. The airport was packed. Families clustered around luggage carts. Business travelers hurried toward security, and vacationers stood beneath departure screens arguing about gates. Ethan barely noticed any of them. His attention was locked on the pale numbers beneath the skin of his left wrist. 16 minutes and 59 seconds. Great, he whispered. Totally normal. Only 16 minutes until the most important moment of my life. No pressure. A woman passing beside him glanced over. Ethan smiled awkwardly and pretended he had been talking through an earbud he was not wearing. Perfect. His soulmate was somewhere inside this building, and Ethan was already losing arguments with himself in public. He adjusted the strap of his carry-on and forced himself forward. Above him, a giant digital advertisement showed a laughing young couple holding their matching wrists toward the camera. When your timer stops, your life begins. Ethan had seen that slogan 1,000 times. Today it felt personal. 15 minutes and 41 seconds. His heart kicked harder. Somewhere beyond the security lines, coffee shops, departure gates, and thousands of strangers was one person whose timer was falling toward 02. Ethan had spent years imagining this day. He had imagined recognizing him instantly. He had imagined some impossible certainty, like the universe would quietly point and say there. Him. He had never imagined an airport full of attractive strangers and the horrifying realization that destiny apparently did not provide name tags. 14 minutes and 58 seconds. Ethan exhaled slowly and stepped deeper into the crowd, unaware that less than 17 minutes from now, the symbol he had trusted his entire life would do something no one had ever told him was possible. At 14 minutes and 32 seconds, Ethan discovered that knowing the exact time you would meet the love of your life did absolutely nothing to help you identify him. He slowed near the center of the terminal, pretending to study the departure board while secretly examining every man within 20 feet. A blond guy with a leather backpack smiled in his direction. Ethan's heart jumped. The stranger walked straight past him and hugged another man waiting behind him. Excellent, Ethan murmured. 14 minutes in, and I am already trying to steal somebody else's soulmate. His wrist read 13 minutes and 47 seconds. He kept moving. The airport seemed determined to make everything worse. Couples were everywhere. Matching infinity symbols appeared on wrists wrapped around. Coffee cups, resting on suitcase handles, and reaching across cafe tables. Ethan had grown up seeing those symbols as proof that the universe had a plan. His parents had met when their timers reached 0 at a grocery store in Ohio. His older sister had found her match during freshman orientation at college. Ethan had listened to those stories so many times that he had quietly expected his own meeting to feel just as obvious. Instead, he was standing beside an overpriced sandwich shop wondering whether destiny expected him to interview strangers. 11 minutes and 26 seconds. Okay, he whispered. Think. His flight was not leaving for another 3 hours, which meant the countdown had nothing to do with his gate. The person could be arriving, departing, working here, or simply passing through. That narrowed the possibilities down to approximately everyone. A boarding announcement echoed overhead. Ethan flinched and nearly walked into a luggage cart. The employee pushing it gave him a patient smile. Big day. Ethan glanced at his wrist. Apparently, the employee noticed the timer and immediately understood. Oh, good luck. Thank you. I think I need it. Ethan continued toward the main concourse. 8 minutes and 12 seconds. His nervousness had changed shape now. It was no longer excitement. It felt like standing at the edge of a life he had imagined without knowing whether the real version would resemble it at all. What if his soulmate hated books? What if he lived 3,000 miles away? What if they had nothing to say to each other? Worse, what if Ethan saw him and felt nothing? 6 minutes and 3 seconds. His pulse accelerated. He passed a coffee stand and caught his reflection in the dark glass beside it. Chestnut hair slightly messy. Green eyes too wide. Navy jacket wrinkled from travel. You look fine, he told himself. A teenager sitting nearby heard him and laughed. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. I am doing incredibly well. For minutes and 11 seconds. That number erased the humor. For minutes. The crowd suddenly seemed twice as large. Ethan turned slowly, scanning faces. Someone hurried past in a pilot uniform. 2 men argued cheerfully over a suitcase. A young couple posed for a photograph beneath the departure. Bored. Nobody looked back at him. 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Ethan started walking faster. He did not know where he was going. His instincts simply screamed that standing still was wrong. 1 minute and 14 seconds. His breathing shortened. Where are you? He whispered. 50 seconds. He crossed the concourse. 32. He looked toward security. 20. Nothing. 15. Ethan broke into a hurried walk, weaving carefully through travelers. 10. 9. 8. His eyes dropped to his wrist for one disastrous second. 7. 6. 5. He looked up. A tall, dark-haired man carrying a camera bag was coming directly toward him. 4. The stranger moved right. Ethan moved right. They both corrected left. 3. Their eyes met. Blue-gray against green. 2. Ethan's entire world seemed to narrow to the stranger's startled face. 1. 0. Ethan never actually hit the floor. 1 second he was stumbling forward with his carry-on rolling awkwardly behind him, and the next a steady hand had caught his forearm, while another stopped the camera hanging from the stranger's shoulder from swinging between them. For one strange heartbeat, neither man moved. Ethan became painfully aware of everything at once. The warm pressure of fingers around his sleeve, the faint smell of coffee and clean cedar, the boarding announcement echoing somewhere overhead, and those blue-gray eyes staring directly into his. Up close, the stranger looked even younger than Ethan had first thought. Maybe his late 20s, with dark brown hair that refused to stay neatly in place and sharp features softened by an expression of complete surprise. You okay? The man asked. His voice was calm, low, unmistakably American. Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing useful arrived. I think so. Brilliant. 26 years preparing for this moment. And apparently his grand romantic vocabulary consisted of 3 words. The stranger released his arm carefully. Sorry, I should have watched where I was going. No, that was me. I was watching Ethan looked down. The numbers were gone. His breath stopped. Where midnight should have been, a thin silver line curled beneath his skin, brightening slowly until it formed a perfect infinity symbol. Ethan stared at it, then at the stranger, then at the stranger's wrist. The man had already noticed. His sleeve had shifted back when he caught Ethan, revealing an identical symbol glowing against pale skin. The airport continued around them as though nothing impossible had happened. Wheels clicked over tile. Someone laughed near a coffee stand. A child complained about being hungry. Ethan could hear all of it, yet somehow every sound felt miles away. Oh, Ethan whispered. The stranger said nothing. Ethan's heart climbed into his throat. Your timer. The man looked at him. I know. And mine. I can see that. Ethan almost laughed from pure nervousness. Of course he could see it. This was not exactly subtle. 2 matching infinity symbols. two timers reaching zero at the same second. Every story Ethan had ever heard had led to this exact moment. His mother had described meeting his father as recognition before introduction, like remembering someone she had never known. Ethan had always wondered whether that was exaggerated. Standing here now, he still did not know. He felt something, certainly, but it was less like recognition and more like someone had opened a door beneath his feet. "I am Ethan," he said finally. The stranger's gaze dropped briefly to the offered hand. Something changed in his face. Not happiness. Not wonder. Fear, maybe, though Ethan could not understand why. "Ryan," he answered after a pause. "Ryan Hayes." Ethan smiled despite himself. "So this is do not." Ryan's voice remained quiet, but the words stopped Ethan cold. "Do not what?" Ryan pulled his sleeve over the infinity symbol. His jaw tightened as he glanced toward the departure board. "Do not turn this into something it is not." Ethan blinked. "I am pretty sure the universe already did that part for us. It was meant as a joke." Ryan did not smile. Instead, he adjusted the strap of his camera bag and took one careful step backward. Ethan's excitement began collapsing into confusion. "Wait, your timer reached 02. "I know. Then you know what this means." Ryan finally met his eyes again, and whatever Ethan expected to find there, it was not this exhausted certainty. "No," Ryan said. "I know what everyone says it means." A boarding announcement called Ryan's flight number from a gate farther down the terminal. His attention flickered toward it. Ethan felt an irrational flash of panic. "You are leaving?" "Yes." "Now." That is generally how flights work. Under any other circumstances, Ethan might have laughed. He did not. "Ryan, we just met." Ryan's expression softened for half a second, which somehow made his next words worse. "Exactly." He stepped around Ethan. Ethan turned after him, stunned. "That is it." Ryan stopped several feet away, but did not immediately turn around. When he finally did, his eyes went first to Ethan's wrist, then to his face. "Forget you met me," he said. And then he walked away. Ethan stood perfectly still while Ryan disappeared into the moving crowd, and for several seconds his brain refused to accept what had just happened. People flowed around him carrying backpacks, neck pillows, paper coffee cups, and ordinary problems. Somewhere nearby, someone was complaining about a delayed flight. Somewhere else, a toddler was laughing. Meanwhile, Ethan had apparently met the love of his life and been rejected before learning whether the man preferred coffee or tea. "Forget you met me," Ethan whispered to himself. He looked down at the silver infinity symbol. Sure, very reasonable request. He should have let Ryan go. Every sensible part of him knew that. A soulmate mark was not permission to chase someone who had clearly said no. Ethan tightened his grip on his suitcase handle and forced himself to remain where he was. 10 feet away, Ryan kept walking. 20, 30. Ethan's chest felt strangely hollow, but he stayed still. If destiny meant anything, Ryan still had a choice. So did he. Then his wrist grew warm. Ethan frowned. The sensation intensified, not painful, but impossible to ignore, like holding a mug that had been filled with coffee seconds ago. He pushed back his sleeve. The infinity symbol flickered. What now? A thin break appeared through the center of the silver mark. Ethan stared as the curved lines faded and rearranged themselves beneath his skin. 1 second, his breath caught. 2 seconds, Ethan looked toward Ryan. The other man had stopped roughly 50 feet away. Ryan slowly raised his left wrist. Even from across the concourse, Ethan could see his posture change. 3 seconds, Ryan turned. Their eyes met through the crowd. For seconds, Ethan forgot every clever thing he might have said. Ryan walked back quickly, weaving between travelers until he stopped several feet away. What did you do? Me? Ethan held up both hands. I barely know how airport Wi-Fi works. I definitely did not reprogram destiny. Ryan looked at Ethan's wrist, then exposed his own. The numbers matched exactly. 17 seconds, 18 seconds, 19 seconds. They are counting up, Ethan said. I noticed. Has this ever happened before? Not that I know of. That answer unsettled Ethan more than he expected. Everyone knew the rules. A timer counted down. 2 people met. The timers became infinity symbols. End of mystery. There were wedding businesses built around that certainty. Dating apps filtered users by remaining countdown years. People planned entire lives around 0. The system was not supposed to improvise. A woman passing them noticed their wrists and slowed. "Are those reverse timers?" she asked. Ryan immediately covered his. Ethan did the same. "No," Ryan answered. The woman stared. They looked like they were going up. Bad lighting. Ryan took Ethan lightly by the elbow and guided him away before she could ask anything else. Ethan followed, too startled to protest. They moved toward a quieter corridor beside an airline lounge. Bad lighting. Ethan whispered. "That was your explanation?" "It worked." Ethan glanced behind them. The woman was already speaking excitedly into her phone. "I do not think it worked." Ryan exhaled and rubbed a hand across his face. For the first time, his calm exterior cracked. He looked genuinely shaken. Ethan's frustration softened. "Ryan, do not. I am not going to ask you to fall in love with me." That made Ryan look up. Ethan swallowed. "But something happened to both of us. I think we deserve to understand it before you get on an airplane." Ryan stared at him for a long moment. Overhead, another boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Ryan checked the departure screen, then his wrist. 2 minutes and 41 seconds. "My flight boards in 25 minutes. "Then give me 10. Ryan hesitated. Ethan expected another refusal. Instead, Ryan glanced toward the quieter lounge corridor and nodded once. 10 minutes. They walked side by side without touching. The numbers continued climbing. Ethan watched them change and felt an uncomfortable realization settle over him. Ryan had been terrified before the timer reversed. Whatever mystery had begun today, Ryan already knew something Ethan did not. Ryan chose a quiet seating area tucked behind the airline lounge, where the noise of the terminal softened into a distant mixture of rolling luggage and muffled announcements. He sat at the far end of a row of gray chairs and checked his wrist again. For minutes and 8 seconds, Ethan sat 2 seats away, deliberately leaving space between them. Ryan noticed. "You can sit closer," he said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. 5 minutes ago, you told me to forget you existed. I am trying to respect the emotional speed limit." For the first time, something almost resembling a smile touched Ryan's face. It vanished quickly, but Ethan caught it. "Why are you afraid of this?" Ethan asked. Ryan looked toward the windows overlooking the runway. An airplane moved slowly across the pavement beneath the afternoon light. "I am not afraid. You ran from me." "I walked." Very dramatically. Ryan sighed. "You really are an editor, are you not?" Ethan blinked. "How did you know that?" Ryan nodded toward the conference badge still clipped to Ethan's carry-on. Ethan looked down. "Right. Excellent detective work." Silence settled between them. Their timers reached 5 minutes together. Ethan watched Ryan's expression change as he stared at the numbers. "My parents had matching infinity marks," Ryan said finally. Ethan stayed quiet. "Everyone thought they were perfect. Teachers mentioned them when I was a kid. Friends called them lucky. Every anniversary, somebody would ask them to tell the story about the day their timers reached 0. Ryan folded his hands. They told that story better than they lived it. Ethan's humor disappeared. Ryan continued, his voice controlled but softer now. They were unhappy for years. They wanted different lives, different cities, different futures. But whenever either of them talked about separating, somebody reminded them about the marks. He glanced at Ethan. Family, friends, sometimes each other. Ethan looked down at his wrist. 6 minutes and 11 seconds. They stayed because they thought leaving meant admitting the universe was wrong. Eventually they did separate, Ryan said. And they became happier people. A boarding announcement sounded in the distance. Ryan did not move. That is why I promised myself something when I was 17. If my timer ever reached 0, I would meet whoever was standing there. I would be polite. I would listen. But I would never call a stranger the love of my life because numbers told me to. Ethan absorbed that quietly. His entire childhood had taught him the opposite. 0 was certainty. 0 was the answer. Yet Ryan was sitting beside him, undeniably connected to the same impossible event, and Ethan knew almost nothing about him. "So when you saw me," Ethan said, "you thought I was going to expect forever immediately." Ryan gave him a pointed look. "You said the universe chose us within 30 seconds. Ethan winced. "In my defense, I was experiencing a fairly significant wrist-related event." Ryan laughed. It was brief and surprised, as though the sound had escaped before he could stop it. Ethan smiled despite himself. Something shifted between them, small but real. Not destiny, not love, just ease. Ethan moved into the empty chair between them. "Experiment." Ryan looked suspicious. That word rarely improves my day. Ethan held his wrist beside Ryan's without touching him. 8 minutes and 2 seconds. 8 minutes and 3 seconds. Still increasing, Ethan said. Maybe distance triggered it, but being close does not stop it. Ryan considered that, then slowly placed his palm over Ethan's hand. Ethan froze, less because of the contact than because Ryan had chosen it. Their wrists rested side by side. 8 minutes and 10 seconds. 8 minutes and 11 seconds. 8 minutes and 12 seconds. Ryan frowned. Still counting. Ethan stared at the numbers. A thought arrived so quietly he almost missed it. Maybe we have been asking the wrong question. Ryan withdrew his hand. What question should we be asking? Ethan looked at him. Not why the timer reversed. His pulse quickened as the numbers continued upward. What if we need to figure out what it is counting now? Ryan stared at Ethan as if the question had rearranged something in his head. Then he looked at their wrists again. 8 minutes and 31 seconds. 8 minutes and 32 seconds. 8 minutes and 33 seconds. It started at 0 when we met, Ethan said slowly. Not when you walked away. Ryan's eyes narrowed. You are right. The infinity symbol appeared first, but when it changed, the numbers did not begin from the moment we separated. They matched the time since our timers reached 0. Ryan checked the clock on his phone, then compared it with the glowing numbers. His expression shifted. Exactly. Ethan leaned back, suddenly aware of how enormous that small discovery felt. So distance has nothing to do with it. Apparently not. And touching does nothing. Ryan glanced at Ethan's hand. We tested that. Ethan tried not to notice the unexpected warmth in his face. Very scientifically. Another announcement echoed through the terminal, calling passengers for Ryan's flight. Neither man stood. Ethan watched the timer advance. 9 minutes and 7 seconds. What if everyone has misunderstood the infinity symbol? He asked. Ryan gave him a skeptical look. Everyone. People saw timers reach 0, saw infinity appear, and decided it meant forever. But how would anyone know what the symbol actually means? Ryan was silent. Ethan's thoughts accelerated. Maybe infinity was never a promise. Then what is it? I do not know. Ethan looked around the terminal. A couple near the windows sat shoulder to shoulder, matching silver marks visible on their wrists. For the first time in his life, Ethan did not see proof. He saw a question nobody had bothered to ask. Ryan followed his gaze. People built their lives around this. So did I. Ethan's admission came quieter than he intended. I thought meeting you would answer everything. Ryan looked back at him. And instead, Ethan smiled faintly. You became significantly more questions. Ryan laughed under his breath. Sorry. Do not be. I think I needed it. That surprised both of them. Ethan looked at his wrist again. 10 minutes and 16 seconds. The numbers kept climbing with perfect indifference. Maybe this is not counting toward anything, Ryan said. Ethan turned. What? A countdown tells you how long until something happens. But this is doing the opposite. Ryan held his wrist beside Ethan's. Maybe it is recording something that already started. The idea landed between them with startling simplicity. Ethan felt his heartbeat quicken. Time since 0. Ryan nodded. Time since we met. Ethan stared at the synchronized numbers. Suddenly the entire system looked different. For 26 years, his timer had told him how long he had to wait. Now, for the first time, it was measuring time he was actually living. That would mean 0 was not the beginning of forever, Ethan whispered. Ryan's expression became very still. Maybe 0 was the end of the countdown. That sounds obvious when you say it. Most terrifying things do. Ethan smiled, but Ryan did not. His gaze had moved toward the gate signs again. The final boarding window was getting closer. Ethan understood before Ryan spoke. Whatever they had discovered, it did not erase Ryan's choice. You still have to leave, Ethan said. I do. Where are you going? London. Photography assignment. 3 months. 3 months. Ethan's old beliefs immediately tried to turn the information into catastrophe. His new understanding stopped them. Ryan was not being taken away from him. Ryan had never belonged to him. That distinction hurt, but it also felt strangely clean. Ryan stood and lifted his camera bag. Ethan stood too. Their timers read 12 minutes and 3 seconds. I am not going to ask you to stay, Ethan said. Ryan searched his face, almost suspiciously. You are not. Ethan shook his head. If this means anything, I want it to mean something because we decide it does. For several seconds, Ryan said nothing. Then his expression softened. You are making it very difficult to walk away from you. Ethan managed a small smile. That sounds like a personal problem. Ryan laughed, but the boarding announcement came again. This time, both of them heard the finality in it. Ryan adjusted his bag and started toward the gate. Ethan walked beside him, watching the numbers continue to rise, and understood the cruelest possibility of all. Perhaps destiny had brought them together only long enough to give them the freedom to separate. They walked toward Ryan's gate slowly, which was ridiculous considering Ryan was the one with a flight to catch, but neither of them seemed willing to acknowledge that their pace had dropped to something closer to a Sunday stroll. Ethan kept his hands in his jacket pockets and watched the overhead signs change from one gate number to the next. Beside him, Ryan carried his camera bag over one shoulder, occasionally glancing at his wrist as the timer climbed. 13 minutes and 26 seconds. 13 minutes and 27 seconds. 13 minutes and 28 seconds. 3 months is not forever, Ethan said. Ryan looked sideways at him. That sounds suspiciously optimistic. I am trying something new. How is it going? Terribly. I hate personal growth. Ryan smiled, and Ethan felt that strange pull again, except now he understood it differently. Maybe attraction could happen quickly. Curiosity could happen instantly. But love was not a number appearing beneath your skin. Love required knowing things. Ryan's favorite song. The place he called home. Whether he became quiet when he was angry or talked too much when he was nervous. Ethan knew none of that. He only knew Ryan laughed softly, carried an expensive camera like it mattered to him, and had spent years questioning something Ethan had never thought to question. They reached the gate. The boarding area was nearly empty. A uniformed employee stood behind the counter while the last few passengers entered the boarding lane. Ryan stopped. Ethan stopped beside him. Suddenly, there was nowhere else to walk. So, Ethan said, "This is awkward. A little. I feel like there should be a rule book. You spent your whole life believing there was one." That landed harder than Ryan intended. Ethan looked down at his wrist. 15 minutes and 2 seconds. Yeah. Ryan's expression softened. Ethan, I did not mean, no. You are right. Ethan took a breath. I was ready to meet a soulmate. I was not ready to meet a person. Ryan went still. Ethan continued before courage could abandon him. That was not fair to you. I looked at this symbol and immediately decided what you were supposed to become in my life. You had about 30 seconds to process it. Still, Ethan met his eyes. You deserve a choice. The gate agent announced final boarding. Ryan glanced toward the entrance. This was it. Ethan felt every instinct inside him demand that he say something dramatic. Ask Ryan to stay. Ask for his number. Ask whether 3 months could become 3 days. Instead, Ethan stepped backward. Go. Ryan stared at him. What? Go to London. You are serious. Very. Ethan forced a smile even as something heavy settled behind his ribs. If you stay because of that timer, I will always wonder whether you actually wanted to. Ryan looked down at the numbers. 16 minutes and 11 seconds. And if I leave? Then you leave. Ethan swallowed. Maybe that is what choice looks like. Ryan's blue-gray eyes stayed on him for a long moment. You are not what I expected. That makes 2 of us. The gate agent called Ryan's name. Ryan exhaled. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Ethan's heart jumped before he could stop it. Ryan looked at the screen, hesitated, then put the phone away again. No number exchanged. No safety net. Ethan understood why. If Ryan returned, it had to be because he chose to return, not because an invisible thread kept tugging them toward each other. Goodbye, Ethan Walker. Ethan managed to keep his voice steady. Goodbye, Ryan Hayes. Ryan turned and walked toward the gate. This time Ethan did not follow. He watched Ryan show his boarding pass, step through the doorway, and disappear down the corridor. 17 minutes and 3 seconds. The timer kept moving. Nothing changed. No warning. No magical correction. Ethan stood alone beneath the bright airport lights and finally understood the possibility Ryan had been trying to show him from the beginning. The universe might introduce 2 people. It might even place them within inches of each other at exactly the right second. But it could not make either one stay. Ethan remained near the gate long after Ryan disappeared from view, staring at the empty doorway as if stubbornness alone might make him reappear. It did not. The gate agent returned to her computer. The last passengers vanished down the corridor. The terminal resumed its ordinary rhythm, almost offensively normal. Ethan looked at his wrist. 18 minutes and 42 seconds, still counting. Well, he whispered, apparently heartbreak has a stopwatch now. The joke sounded weak even to him. He turned away and walked toward the windows, dragging his carry-on behind him. Outside, aircraft moved beneath a pale afternoon sky. Somewhere among them was the plane that would take Ryan across the Atlantic for 3 months. Ethan should have felt cheated. He had spent 26 years watching numbers disappear from his wrist, believing every lost second was carrying him towards certainty. Instead, Zero had delivered a handsome stranger with blue-gray eyes, a camera bag, inconvenient opinions, and absolutely no intention of rearranging his life for destiny. And somehow Ethan could not hate him for it. That was the worst part. Ryan had been right. Ethan sat near the window and studied the timer again. 20 minutes and 5 seconds. If the numbers were recording time since they met, then they were not predicting anything anymore. They were simply witnessing it. Ethan thought about his parents and their grocery store story, his sister and freshman orientation. Millions of couples pointing to infinity symbols as evidence that they had been chosen. Maybe they had been asking the symbol to prove something it never promised. Maybe infinity did not mean you must stay forever. Maybe it meant the possibility after zero had no predetermined ending. Ethan sat straighter. Oh, he whispered. The thought was so simple it almost annoyed him. The original timer had always moved toward one unavoidable moment. Meeting. After that, there was nothing left to predict. The future belonged to the people wearing the marks. 21 minutes and 17 seconds. Ethan laughed softly, alone beside the enormous window. You really could have included instructions. A nearby businessman glanced at him. Ethan ignored it. He had embarrassed himself enough today to become immune. His phone buzzed with a message from his sister asking whether he had landed yet. Ethan started typing, stopped, then locked the screen. How exactly did one explain that? He had met his supposed soulmate and encouraged him to leave the country? Across the terminal, the departure board updated. Ryan's flight changed from boarding to gate closed. Ethan's smile faded. There it was. Choice. Real, clean, painful choice. Ryan had made his. Ethan stood and reached for his suitcase. His own flight was still hours away. He could find coffee, call his sister, pretend the last half hour had not rewritten his understanding of romance. He had taken only 3 steps when a boarding announcement crackled overhead. Then another. People moved around him. Ethan kept walking. 23 minutes and 9 seconds. 23 minutes and 10 seconds. 23 minutes and 11 seconds. Behind him came the rapid rhythm of suitcase wheels. Ethan did not turn. Airports were made of footsteps and departures. Then he heard a familiar voice. Ethan. He stopped. Every thought vanished. Slowly, Ethan turned around. Ryan stood about 30 feet away, slightly breathless, camera bag still over his shoulder and boarding pass folded in one hand. Ethan stared at him, then automatically looked toward the gate. Your plane. I know. The gate closed. I noticed. Ethan's heart began doing something deeply unhelpful. Did you forget something? Ryan looked at him for a long moment. Yes. Ethan glanced toward the chairs they had left. Your charger? Ryan laughed once, almost disbelievingly. Then he walked closer. 20 feet. 10. 5. He stopped directly in front of Ethan. Their timers continued climbing without hesitation. 23 minutes and 46 seconds. I got all the way down the boarding corridor, Ryan said. And I realized I was doing exactly what I accused everyone else of doing. Ethan frowned. Ryan lifted his wrist between them. I was letting this decide my choice. I was leaving because I wanted to prove the timer could not control me. His eyes settled on Ethan's. That is still letting it control me. Ethan forgot to breathe. Ryan lowered his hand. So I came back to make the decision without asking what the universe wanted. And what do you want? Ryan smiled, nervous for the first time since they met. I want to know the guy who told his supposed soulmate to get on a plane. Ethan stared at Ryan for so long that Ryan finally lifted an eyebrow. This is usually the part where the other person says something. Ethan blinked. I had something. It was probably charming. Then you came back and destroyed my ability to form sentences. Ryan smiled, and this time he did not hide it. Good start. Ethan looked toward the closed gate and then back at him. You really missed an international flight for a conversation? I can take another flight. That sounds expensive. It is. This might be the least practical romantic gesture I have ever witnessed. Ryan tilted his head. Romantic. Ethan immediately looked away. I said nothing. You definitely did. Airport acoustics. Ryan laughed, and the sound loosened something inside Ethan. 26 years of anticipation had disappeared, replaced by something smaller and somehow more meaningful. Curiosity. They found a coffee shop overlooking the runway and sat across from each other beside the window. No crowd gathered. No music appeared from nowhere. Nobody applauded. Ethan liked that. For the first time that day, the moment belonged only to them. Ryan wrapped both hands around his coffee. Can we start over? Ethan considered him seriously. You mean pretend you did not reject me approximately 30 seconds after destiny introduced us? Preferably. Impossible. That is going into the permanent record. Ryan shook his head, smiling. Then he extended his hand across the table. Ryan Hayes, 29, travel photographer, terrible at cooking, suspicious of anything described as destiny. Ethan looked at the offered hand. Earlier, touching Ryan had felt like waiting for the universe to explain itself. Now it felt different. Simple. Voluntary. Ethan took it. Ethan Walker, 26, book editor, excellent at ordering takeout, recently suspicious of destiny. Their hands remained together for one quiet second before separating. Better, Ryan said. Much. They talked. Not about forever. Not about soulmates. About ordinary things. Ryan grew up outside Denver and had started photography after borrowing his grandfather's old camera. Ethan grew up in Columbus and became an editor because he loved fixing stories more than admitting his own life was usually disorganized. Ryan hated olives. Ethan defended them with unnecessary passion. Ethan loved old bookstores. Ryan confessed that he photographed bookstores in every city he visited. Somewhere between coffee and an argument about whether pineapple belonged on pizza, Ethan stopped checking his wrist. Nearly an hour passed before Ryan noticed. Ethan. What? Ryan was staring at his arm. Ethan followed his gaze. 1 hour 17 minutes and 43 seconds. The numbers shimmered faintly. 1 hour 17 minutes and 44 seconds. Is that normal? Ryan asked. Today has permanently damaged my understanding of normal. 1 hour 17 minutes and 45 seconds. The digits softened at their edges. Ethan leaned closer. The numbers curved, stretching into thin silver lines. 1 hour 17 minutes and 46 seconds. Then they folded gently into one another until the timer disappeared completely. In its place rested the infinity symbol. Ethan looked at Ryan's wrist. The same symbol had returned there. Neither man spoke. Ethan waited for some grand revelation, some certainty telling him exactly what it meant. None came. Strangely, he no longer needed one. Ryan studied the mark and smiled. Think it means forever? Ethan looked through the window at planes rising into the evening sky. I think it means the countdown is finished. Ryan met his eyes. And after that? Ethan smiled. After that, we decide. Ryan nodded as if that answer mattered more than anything written on their skin. His replacement flight would leave the next morning. Ethan's own trip could wait. Tonight they had coffee, an airport hotel lobby, and several hours to learn whether destiny had good taste. Ryan lifted his wrist again. So what happens if this thing changes tomorrow? Ethan shrugged. Then tomorrow we talk about it. And if it never changes? Same answer. Ryan laughed softly. Ethan realized that was the difference. Yesterday, he had wanted a symbol that guaranteed he would never lose someone. Now he wanted something much less certain and much more real. A person who kept choosing to stay. Ryan reached across the table, palm open. Ethan placed his hand in it. Outside, another plane climbed into the darkening sky, carrying hundreds of people toward places they had chosen to go. For the first time in his life, Ethan did not wonder what his future had already decided for him. He looked at Ryan and wondered what they might decide together.